Now I know I'm known for speedy intros, but this man is extremely busy, and it's actually a Christmas miracle in June that I got him for 45 minutes. I have Yuri Lowenthal today. Look him up. There you go. How you like that? So,
Hi, Chris.
hi. Oh my
That's
gosh.
that may be the coolest intro I've had.
You flatter me.
Thanks for that.
Don't blow smoke up my ass. Listen, let me. I always bust the generic crapola out of the way. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What? How did the acting bug bite you? How did you eventually lead to your first professional acting gig? Go.
Oh man, it did bite. It bit in the last year of high school for me, and it was something I'd always wanted to try, but had always kind of put it off because I was like, I was doing other stuff. I was doing gymnastics. I was playing D&D. I was, collecting comics. I was like, um, but I finally like it. I realized that if I didn't try it before I left high school, I probably wasn't going to start something new, brand new like that in college. So in my last year of high school, I tried out for drama class and got in and did basically every show that was available that year and couldn't get enough of it bit sort of like in the beginning. Like I'm like I'm definitely a theater kid. Like I love this place. And then they were doing Dracula. It was the last show of the year, and I didn't want to play Dracula. I didn't want to play Harker. I wanted to play Renfield, who gets to chew the most scenery. But they were like, because we have so many more girls in the class, we're doing a lot of gender swapping, and we're only reading girls for Renfield. I was like, oh. And so as it is in high school theater, like we all just sort of sat in the theater and people would go up and read for the different things in front of everybody else. And I kept putting my hand up whenever she'd like, who's up next up for Renfield? Like, and she's like, Yuri, we're not reading guys for that. But I just kept putting my hand up, and I went up. She finally gave in and let me go up. And I think she could tell I wanted it so bad. Like I tore it up. I don't know if I was good, but I was definitely into it. And so she's like, okay, it's a small enough role, I guess, that it's fine. And so at the very end of I had a blast. At the very near the end of the show, there is this moment that is in the script. It's basically just like stage directions. It's they run into Renfield as they're coming into the castle to stake Dracula, and he scurries off into the darkness. And I went to the drama teacher. I'm like, hey, I have this idea that when I go scurry off in the darkness, maybe I could run over to that wall and climb up the wall for a little bit, and then drop down and scurry off. And I've got this idea where I drive these masonry nails into the proscenium of the stage, and put glow tape, around them so that I can see them, but the audience can't. And to her credit, like, there is no world in which she should have said, yeah, Yuri, that sounds like a great idea. But Terry, to her credit, she said, okay. And this is, you have those moments that you'll where everything sort of, freezes in time and your life changes. And I was doing the show, and it got to that moment, and I scurried off, and I scurry up the wall, and from the from the audience's perspective, it looks like I'm actually like climbing the wall for a minute. And even though I'm facing away from the audience, I hear everybody in the audience go, and fucking like that was it. Like I was like, oh my God, I made a decision and I put some work into it, and it made those people feel that. Like everybody in the audience felt that thing.
And I've been chasing the high of that gasp ever since.
I really have. Like, that's the dragon that I chase. Seriously, it's like something broke in me, and while I tried to, in through college and through work, after college, I kept thinking, oh well, I mean, theater and making stupid movies with my friends and stuff like that will always be sort of like a side thing. But after getting into government work for a couple of years, but still spending all my free time out of the office doing plays and, again, making stupid movies with my friends. And I realized that I was like, oh man, I got to give this a shot. and I was doing government work in Japan at the time through the JET program.
Oh, okay.
And so it was like, it was extra bureaucratic. The computers were extra old. Like all of it was like, I liked, a lot of the people, and I liked being in Japan. I loved being in Japan, but I just knew like the government work would be there in 30 years, like, I mean, but like if I didn't try this now, I didn't want to look back in 30 years and go, oh man, I wonder what, my life would have been like if that had worked out. And so I said, buy the government work, realized it would be there if I wanted to come back, and moved to New York for 6 years, and then came out to LA and just did a whole bunch of free stuff, short films and, a lot of experimental black box theater, and, came out to Los Angeles and was looking for other ways to make a living as an actor, and took a voice acting class with Rick Zeef, and he still teaches. He's still a great actor. Like he's one of those few teachers that you come across who's like, he's teaching and he's also acting the shit out, like he's working. But it was a great class, and he got a gig. I think the statute of limitations has passed on this. He got a gig directing. Sorry, Rick, if you're listening and you didn't want people to know this, but come on, we've known each other long enough. He got a gig directing a dub for SD Gundam Force.
There it is.
And he totally blustered his way through it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've directed dubs before," and he hadn't. And so a lot of his auditions, he was auditioning like people from class that he knew. So he would already have an established relationship. A, he killed it, and B, that was my first role in the the dubbing world, and my first real sort of extended like job. I had gotten one job before that, and it was for that. You might have to explain to your fans what a CD-ROM is. But it was for a CD-ROM that was like shrink wrapped to, like if you bought a 2-liter bottle of 7-Up, you got a like a little mini game, shrink wrapped to the thing that you could play on whatever computer was popular.
I had
then.
Chex Quest. Everybody out there.
Right. So that was, and it introduced me to the dubbing community, who were so welcoming, and got me into voice acting. The larger community, who was also so welcoming, and it was such a shock from having come from the theater world and the on-camera world, where our community of actors is not always as supportive as you would want them to be. And so that was it. And I still do theater and film projects and stuff like that every now and then, but actually I haven't done theater since my son was born, because that requires it's like at least 6 weeks of nights away. But that was how it all got started.
Well, first of all, let me go back to the very beginning. I love the irony of like, no, I don't want to play Dracula. I almost wanted to joke, oh, did you want to be Alucard? Because then that worked out for many years later.
See, I know. Oh, there it is.
And the moral of that early story of like, okay, so the power of being incessantly annoying actually does pay off sometimes. So bizarre.
Right.
And I actually didn't know about the government work, because I did know you had quite a storied history, because you speak, like, as far as I know, fluent like Japanese and Russian, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Not Russian, French, and my German is super rusty, but I grew up. My dad was doing government work. He worked for USAID, may it rest in peace. So I traveled a lot growing up, and my mom's originally from Europe, and so I've got a lot of relatives there, and I just grew up internationally and with a lot of with a lot of languages around me. So, which is so important.
I feel like a lot of people don't understand, like, when you want to be an actor, being a fully lived human being with actual dimension to yourself beyond just, no, I am an actor. Well, you actually have to be a person too, by the way.
Well, that's that's what I caution people. Sometimes I see people they go from class to class to class to class to class, and they're like, all their effort and all their time and all their money is class and doing plays and and all that, and marketing, and I'm like, interesting people make interesting actors, and you never know what like weird little experience of yours that you do that nobody else does that is gonna set you apart. Even for, like, I didn't think that speaking Japanese would help, in my acting career, and yet it has here and there. So.
Well, transitioning from the dubbing bit for a second, because if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, at least from kind of my knowledge of the all, and you know me, I'm Mr. Rolodex. I think literally like you, Crispin, and like maybe Greg Ayers and like one or two other people, I think are some of the only people that got in during your guys' kind of generation that actually avidly watched anime and like understood what it was like before you got into it. Because I mean, now like everybody of my generation after, we were all anime nerds. We all grew up with the stuff that you guys did, etc.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
But
No,
I did in fact
okay.
watch SD Gundam, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
Yeah. Good old.
I own it on
Bakugan
Blu-ray.
Mario. Is it
Oh,
on
I
Blu-ray?
know.
What?
Blazing Blades of Justice.
There he is.
Wow.
I ran into it,
There
but
it is.
a total side note, I ran into a leaky who played Zero on that show at an animation class, and I recognized her crazy Greek-ass name, and I'm like, ma'am, did you work on SD Gundam? And she's like, how do you know what that is? It was such
Oh
a
my
moment.
God.
That was a few years ago now. But
That's beautiful.
So you started doing shows out here. You were getting shopped around to all the usual places. Naruto was kind of monumental because I think also
without a doubt.
I don't know necessarily if like Viz or Studio necessarily knew going in like no guys, you don't understand, this is the show of the year already. But I do believe you and Mary Elizabeth and a couple other people was like, oh no, we know this is going to be gigantic. So
well, I had to, I mean, I hadn't, when I went into audition for it, I hadn't heard of it, and so I was doing my due diligence and I went online.
Okay.
And when I went online, I was like, oh, okay, this is a thing.
Yeah, we can't fuck this up.
Right, exactly. Because literally there were already death threats out. They're like, we hear they're dubbing this, and if they don't fucking nail this, we are gonna murder, straight murder those actors. And I was like, oh no, oh no, yeah. So there was some pressure there, but yeah, I grew up watching anime even before I knew what anime was. I was just like, this is the coolest, Star Blazers is the coolest cartoon out there. And so is Battle of the Planets. Yes, and so is, and Speed Racer. And then, of course, Akira came out, and we were like, and Ninja Scroll and Supernatural BC, like all the super weird shit, the Urotsuki Doji, Wandering Kid.
The one someone has a weird VHS copy of in college, and it's like, whoa, what is this?
100%. We used to collect those weird pirated VHS. Yeah, I may even still have a couple.
I don't know. I have like one like Dragon Ball GT, like crappy, like with all the commercials and everything on it. Ironically, I was in high school just starting to get interested in actually doing this professionally when you guys were starting Naruto, so there's the gap of that. Good lord.
Yep.
I know obviously by now you've become like an icon in games, but I had forgotten, looking back at your stuff, that Prince of Persia was like the beginning, like way at the beginning. I thought that was like a little decently into, but like that was basically the start, I think, wasn't it?
It really was. Again, your research bears out, sir. I mean, you could look at Naruto as like the beginning of sort of that my big like anime boom. Although my first lead role, it was definitely Rave Master. Yeah, but I mean, they kind of screwed that up and they didn't release all the episodes and so that but it was a good time. But yeah, for video games, I would argue that it really kicked in for me. Here's another bit of trivia. The first video game I worked on was the SD Gundam video game.
Oh, I didn't know there was a time. Oh, yeah, back when they dubbed Gundam games.
I've never played it. I have no idea if it's any good. But yeah, Prince of Persia was the one, and people still come up to me and say, "Yo, Prince of Persia," and I'm like, "I know." And I remember playing that. I don't play all the games that I work on, but I remember playing the shit out of on my PS2 just over and over again. It was so good. Like, it was one of those games that I'm glad I worked on it because I might not have found it then. But it was one of those games that was just so right for me. Like even if I hadn't been involved, I would have, played it.
Please remind me, because I might be confusing this. Was one of the ones that you did early on, because I know you did quite a few of them. Yeah. Was there one where like when you do like an uppercut combo, it always has the same clip of like, so you're like in somebody's place, like breaking pots, finding money, and it's like, it's like, dude, why are you so angry about that, man?
Probably, yeah. I think because I've recently gone back to it to play it with my son.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's from Sands of Time.
Oh, okay.
Although you're right. The way it goes is I was in Sands of Time, which I'm going to call the first one, even though Jordan Mechner had done,
Right.
some Apple IIe, earlier, Prince of Persia's. So I was in the first one. Then they recast me for the second one because they went in a different direction.
Mhm.
And then I was in the third one. And then they cast Nolan North because that's what you did at the time for the fourth one. And then I was in the fifth one.
Gotcha.
So I guess I'm the odd prince.
Every other prince.
The odd prince.
Perfect segue. Also, you mentioned a bit about how speaking Japanese kind of helped out, because I know the story of, and I remember distinctly hearing you when I watched the Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo movie, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I remember you talking about at many a con I think we'd done together even about how you got in with that because you happened to speak Japanese, somebody recommended you, and then that opened the door into Legion of Superheroes and Ben 10, the relationship with Warner Brothers, all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Going back to that, what we just talked about, you never know what that little thing is that's going to help you out. So just do a bunch of, fun things that you love and weird little things. Yeah, that was the first time I worked with Andrea Romano, and the first time I worked over at Warner Brothers was there was a coordinator who was on Naruto, or who was at least working over at Studiopolis. I don't even know if how that timed out, but she knew that she was Japanese. She's Japanese, and she knew that I spoke Japanese. She said, "Hey, they've asked me to put together a group of people because they know I'm Japanese, and of Japanese actors. Would you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing." And then, of course, I was the only white guy in the room, but which was awkward, and for many years was awkward going into auditions like that. Now I do less work in that field, and they're more appropriately casting. But once upon a time, that was not the case. And so that was Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo was kind of that little door that, so when the auditions came for Legion of Superheroes, Warner Brothers had, they, like, I had already been over there. Like, I don't even remember if I don't even know if they remembered that I was on that, but I felt a little more comfortable walking in there because I had gone in there for the other thing.
Yeah.
And then again, Andrea Romano, when they were auditioning for Ben 10 for Alien Force, that I was like, oh, I had already met her, and when I would go in for Legion of Superheroes, I would go up to her office and say hi. And so it was one little thing led to another little thing, led to another little thing. Yeah, they add up.
Because I even remember, like, I always thought it was a big victory when I was starting to see people that were predominantly like people like guys like you and Kari, and who were starting in the anime world and predominantly anime people. But then when I was hearing them in my American cartoon, Steve as well, obviously with Avatar and all this stuff, and I do remember when Legion started, and I was like, oh, that's like you and Kari both in that. I was like, that's awesome. Yeah. And then even when I wasn't like a big Ben 10 follower, but I have so many friends that were like absolutely obsessed with the entire mythos of everything. So I remember when Alien Force started, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And especially because there was that was the time of a lot more and more and more anime influence into American cartoons, especially the action ones and stuff. Absolutely.
They were finally starting to get it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, maybe we should do more of that. Yeah. Oh, this Avatar thing seems to be working out. Yeah.
Right.
You had talked about, and I'm not surprised by this before, but the making films and stuff with friends, because how I came into your life, your and your lovely wife, Kara, was when you guys were in the midst of doing Shelf Life. But I was not surprised, of course, to know that you were doing all sorts of things, long before that. But what led to it's Monkey Kingdom is your company, right?
Monkey Kingdom Productions. Right. Yep.
So what was the whole kind of genesis of how that came?
Oh man, doing these things? For years, early on in our living out here in Los Angeles, I mean, being an actor is so disempowering, to a large extent, just because you have to wait for somebody to say yes for you to go to work. Like you have to go, through auditions, and you can't just go, I'd like to go to work today. You have to. Yeah. So we had decided to start, making our own stuff so that we could, even if it was literally costing us money, it was keeping our hearts alive. So we made, we started with like this, no budget feature film, this thriller that we shot because we were house sitting at somebody's house, and it was like this big, kind of big house, mansion-y kind of place, and they were going to be gone for 2 weeks, and jokingly we said, we should shoot a movie while we're here. And then I went,
Wait.
We should shoot a movie while we're here. And so we had like a week and a half to write a script and crew up, and then like 2 weeks to shoot the film. And it was like, I honestly, the film was fine. But I wish we had shot like I wish we had shot a documentary, because that was the crazy part.
Yeah.
But anyway, then we went on to like, what else can we do with, the resources we have? And Shelf Life, big plug for Shelf Life, for, which I still hold a massive torch. And if you like voice actors, like literally all the voice actors, from that I came up with, are, on the show, they appear in the show in one way or another. But Tara actually had come up with this idea about action figures on a shelf. It's kind of like Toy Story, but like naughty.
Yeah.
Like if you want to know, if you like Toy Story, but you needed more sex and drugs and rock and roll in your Toy Story, the Shelf Life. But we were going to do it live action. We were going to, build this big shelf, and we were going to pretend to be, these action figures on the shelf, and there's a torturous, little boy who lives underneath. And it's still to this day, it's one of my favorite things that we've ever done. But we did the first season, and it was really rough. And, then the second season got better, and the third season. And when we're going into the fourth season, we were like, there's just stuff we've always wanted to do, but we've always been just funding it out of pocket, and we haven't been able to afford to do any of that stuff. So that was, when a lot of people were crowdfunding projects, and we're like, you know what, we've already done 3 seasons. We're going to do, we've already got a fan base. Let's appeal to the fan base. We'll tell them what we want to do, and see if they're willing to support it. Because, it had been free, just up on YouTube, since the beginning. And they showed up, and we raised like $35,000 to really really upscale the fourth season. Like, it's on a whole other level. And then, we kept thinking, like, we kept pitching it to, like, we wanted to pitch it to like Adult Swim, and it seemed like that kind of thing. Nobody was buying it. And after that fourth season, we were like, oh, I don't, crowdfunding is super hard, and it's a drain. There's so much energy goes into it, and I don't even know, who's watching it. We had an amazing fan base, and every now and then still pick up people. They're like, I didn't know this was a thing, but I was like, you know what? I want to do a few more things that we didn't get to do that I always wanted to do on the show, and I want to wrap it up. And so we did, I think, like maybe 4 or 5, sort of like a season 4.5. And one of the episodes I had always wanted to do was do an animated episode, and that's where you come in, sir.
Yes,
yeah.
Here's an embarrassing story for those of you who don't, which is probably all of you. I don't know if I've ever talked about this anywhere before. So I have been in LA coming up on 11 years, which I cannot believe at this point.
That's
the
nuts.
year before I
That's
moved, well, that's nothing compared to you, of course, but
Well-
the year before that I moved, I went to visit LA just to like see what it was like, to understand even the concept of apartment hunting, and talking to producers, anybody I knew. And it all started with, are you ready for this, internet? This is going to sound unbelievable. A positive interaction between 2 people on twitter.com. Not a thing that you think would be humanly possible in this day and age. But Yuri and Tara,
You'll have to explain to them what it was like back in those days.
2013, yeah. Good Lord. So I think it was literally you guys had put out the feelers for, hey, like, we'd love to do an animated episode. And I had been watching Shelf Life because I was just interested. I was such a freak about voiceover actors. Whenever guys like you would do something else, I was like, oh, let me see this. And because I had been a creator before I was doing voiceover, I've been doing animation forever. So I said, hey, I'd love to work with you guys. So Yuri and Tara Platt took me out to lunch while I was visiting. And at the time, everybody, I was a very, very picky eater. I didn't eat much of anything beyond, like, Happy Meals practically. It was really embarrassing. So we went to a Paquito Mas in Burbank, and I sat down and I drew some sketches of the 4 main characters from Shelf Life, just to show, like, here's what I'm capable of, like, right out the gate. And they were already like, oh my God, we're so enthused, and da-da-da. And I ordered like a plate of nachos, And Tara was so sweet. She's like, honey, we'll treat you. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not that hungry. I was very hungry. I was just like, I've never had Mexican food. Ew. But so I did this episode. And it was so much fun. I had the pleasure of getting to animate now mega famous for Last of Us, Ashley Johnson, who is a guest character in that episode. It's kind of a Monster High parody sort of character. And it was so much fun. And then a year later, I did a crowdfunding campaign for the first time for my show, Tome. And I was like, I want like cool guests for the Net King, like the creators of the virtual world and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he wouldn't say yes to this, would he? But like, wait, no, but it's a villain. It's like, it's the twist villain. It's different. It's interesting. Yuri would, yes. I only think if I finished the sentence, he's like, yes. And that's for all of you forever for the last 14 years that have asked me, how did you get him to be Ruby Rules? I asked and he said yes. And then we got married and had 10 beautiful children. Okay, not that part, but so, and absolutely, now that I've shot that load, please go watch Shelf Life. If you guys have never heard of it, literally search Shelf Life, Yuri Lowenthal, Tara Platt, Travis Willingham, D. Bradley Baker. You'll find it. It'll be your first hit. So much fun, hilarious, still holds up very well.
There's the comedy has changed.
Yes.
I have looked, I've watched, just every now and then I like to brush up, and I'm like, oh, that might not fly as well today, but it was a different time. But I still stand by the show. It's I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I would same with me from my early 2000 stuff for sure. I know we're running short on time. I can't not mention SpiderMan just because that's like
please do
as well. And you have there he is.
He's always close.
Of course. And so it's funny because I know you had played him a few times in video games prior to the PlayStation Spider-Man. And that game kind of earned you, as I've heard from people, kind of like a place on like the Mount Rushmore of like Spider-Man voices specifically. Which is, and gone on at least 2, 3, 4 times, I think, since then in other games. But that was a bit of a coup because I remember you had done Sunset Overdrive before that, and I if I'm remembering correctly, again, was like, there's no way they'll hire me for this a second time, right?
Well, I found out afterwards that there were people over there who said that they wouldn't. They're like, because I had my champions over there, and then there were the people who were doing the casting were like, oh, well, he just did the lead in Sunset Overdrive, right? And they're like, yeah, we were like working with him. They're like, yeah, well, Spider-Man's a completely different character, and they were like, well, he's an actor. He can do different stuff.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, we don't think he's right for it. But then they cast somebody in the role. It didn't work out. They went back to the drawing board and they were like, please, will you, if you're bringing in a bunch of other people, will you at least bring them in? And thank, I will never be able to thank them enough. But they did. And, it kept whittling to, and it was like all, it was this intense, like group of, like, I knew most of the people who were also auditioning, and, every one of them were brilliant. And so it was, that was hard. Like I didn't think going into it that I had much of a chance, but the group got smaller and smaller, and I was still part of it. And I was like, and I got more and more nervous. And then I remember actually in one of the final callbacks, I was like, well, now they're never going to give it to me because I have to go in and I've got a mohawk now. And I literally look like the character from Sunset Overdrive. Right. And I'm like, oh God, please let them be able to see through the mohawk. And I went in and I guess they did. And they've been, man, I'll never be able to say enough good stuff about Insomniac just as a company and as a group of people.
Climbing up that wall on that first play was also some kind of full circle thing.
Right, right.
And I noticed this while I was watching someone playing it, but when the first one was new at the time, that you guys had 2 versions of most of the overworld speaking stuff. One Midmotion, all right, I'm on my way. All right, I'm on my way. And I'm like, that is a very cool attention to detail that I adore.
Well, they didn't head into it with that idea. It was something they came up with after we had already started recording. Yeah. So we had to actually go back and pick stuff up, and they're like, man, this is a lot of extra work and we don't know if anybody's even going to notice. And they did. So, I mean, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of a lot of like AAA games who are like, oh, no, we have to do that.
There's the bar right there.
Yeah.
I didn't even think to talk about this because this is actually a really important thing of Because I've been kind of going back and going through like a lot of the rare games like Killer Instinct and Banjo-Kazooie and some of the stuff where a lot of these developers were playing with mocap before they were even getting actors that often for video games at all, like in the 90s. And I think about how you were also, if I'm not mistaken, alongside guys like Nolan and Troy and all these guys that were doing mocap. And that's a world that I've never even remotely dabbled in, but it does fascinate me. And I know that that was, of course, for Spider-Man, that was the whole idea. What was that? Because I don't even know anybody's story about getting into that through like, between voiceover and on camera and just the whole plot of Gap.
Well, it's been this interesting like full circle because I started in theater, and then did film and TV, and then went into voice acting, and with bringing all this PCAP and mocap into video games. And up until that point, they had mostly just cast, specifically like movement artists or stunt people to do all that stuff. And then actually casting the actors. I mean, I think, with the, success of Uncharted, in the beginning there, they're like, oh, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can cast the same person to do that, which is not at all to cut out the fact that, for Spider-Man and for all these games, like I have an amazing team of, stunt performers who step in and do all the cool shit like that. I am both unskilled, too afraid, and too old to attempt myself. And they really make Spider-Man. But it turns the performance into this amazing kind of dance where sometimes in a scene I'll do the first part, like it's Pete walking around, and then he has to walk over to a window and jump out the window, and I do it all the way up to the window. And then they tag me out, and they, bring in, somebody, one of the amazing stunt performers we had, and they carry it on from there. So it's this cool, handoff situation for a lot of this stuff. Or they'll do the scene, and I'm sort of right near the stunt actor, and as they're doing the scene, I'm doing the lines. Like, so I'm sort of aping what they're doing. But then not the hard stuff or the dangerous stuff.
Which, by the way, because then the ADR stuff plays into that, where you're dubbing over. Because I've done some of that. I've done some cases where I'm dubbing over mocap of other actors, like in Europe. And I'm like, oh, thank God for anime teaching me how to do that. So
I know
all
exactly
connects together. Good Lord.
Yeah, but it's I mean, it all came back to theater, and in a great way, because so much of what we do, I mean, Chris, this is so solitary. We're in a booth by ourselves, and we have to imagine everything. We have to imagine the other performances, and I mean, we've got the director there, for support and context, but it's very kind of lonely and limiting to a certain point. But then back to getting in the suits, and we were performing it like a play. We were shooting it like a movie, and I had Bill Salyers right there in my face for those scenes, and I think that's why those scenes turned out so well, is because we were right there in it with each other, reacting off of what was happening in real time.
I do remember, by the way, the last time I did something, maybe a class or something with Chris Zimmerman, she mentioned like, oh, and you can imagine, all right, Yuri, and you and Tara both look up because she plays Yuri, and I'm like, I didn't even think about that. That was separated so much.
That was never not weird. That the character's name was Yuri, and I had to yell it a lot. And that was weird enough, but then the added layer of knowing that it was played by my real life wife just made it like, off the charts weird.
Yeah. I haven't checked out the second game. I don't have a PS5. I want to watch the second game as like a movie.
It'll be around.
For sure. Two last things I want to do before I have to let you go. So speaking of the game stuff, so we are, as of this will be coming out, I'm sure, while it's still going, unless a miracle happens.
Please, I'm praying for miracles.
Let this video immediately be dated. We are still in the midst of what is coming up on almost a full year of the video game strike to negotiate for better AI protection, which is a serious problem for all artists. I say that as an animation person as well. There has been so much said about it. A lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of correct, a lot of incorrect. There is way too much to say about it, and we only have about 10 minutes. But if there is one particular thing, I don't know if you've maybe have something like this that's been on your mind, but if there's one particular thing that like the general public still doesn't quite understand, that maybe you as someone who has been doing this for so long and has a level of authority. I mean, this guy literally, by the way, if those of you don't know, at a picket on his birthday in the rain. Legit. So listen up, like, to anything at all that you want to share with people that want to understand, that want to support us, you know.
Yeah, I guess just supporting and talking about how human performances are important to you. Look, I am not anti-technology. In fact, I know a lot of, voice actors who use AI to their benefit. For auditions or times when they can't get it, they've banked their voices and they control it. But the problem we run into is actually less the technology and more just exploitation, by greedy corporations, which is let's be honest, this could lead to a much longer conversation about how it's ruining everything.
Yeah.
But in our specific case, and how you've probably been able to see, in the news, that you can probably hop on to multiple sites where you can type in Yuri Lowenthal, and they're like, yeah, have Yuri Lowenthal say whatever you want to. We've got his voice, and you can do whatever you want. Now that's it's funny and it's fun, but it's also terrible on many levels. One of the things we're fighting to be able to have as a protection going forward is consent. Like, I want, a company could, what a lot of the companies are saying is, well, if we, record your voice in a thing, then that's just data and we can use it to create, any new stuff in the future that we want.
Yeah.
And not have to ask you. So that's the consent part that really bothers me. Like, I can read a script and say, hey, this is uncomfortable for me, or I'd rather not. I mean, and then you can either turn down the job or, go ahead with the job, and you guys can work together, to find, something that works.
Sure.
But in this case, I wouldn't have any say in it at all. And it would be me, saying those things, the scenes, whatever. Compensation, obviously. If they can record enough data in one session to then create, a model of your voice that they can create new performances and, add into other performances, or use to train the model, then there's really no use for them to ever hire you again.
Yeah.
So we are literally looking at our, the future of our careers and the next generation of people, because sometimes the defense that comes up is, yeah, well, don't worry about it. We'll still hire, the leads, we'll do real people, and then all the, sort of the background characters, NPCs, that sort of thing.
Oh, you mean where people get their start a lot of the time?
Exactly. That's how, not only is that how I came up, but it is also because you can't always be the lead in every game.
Yeah.
When people are sick of me and I don't have a lead role, I still have to earn a living. And so those are the jobs that I do. So not only does it support me when I don't have like a SpiderMan going on, it also trains the next generation of actors and allows them to make a living so that they can commit and to their art and become better actors. Now, if you take all that away, who's gonna be next? Like, nobody will be able to afford to do the job anymore.
Yeah.
And then it'll probably just go to famous movie stars.
Yeah.
And then they'll do all the NPCs but I think, and then of course the last thing is it's 3 C's that we've made it very easy: consent, compensation, control. Control is, we need to know where if you've recorded our data, where it's going. Like, sometimes a company will record it and they'll say, we promise we won't use your data for anything other than what we talked to you about, and so on. And then, a year later, that company goes out of business and they sell all their assets to another company. And that company's like, game on. Like, well, we don't have to do any of that. Like, so we don't know where it goes. Like, I have a friend who is, primarily does, stunt stuff and movement stuff for PCAP. And she has seen her movement sets because she knows how, everybody's got a distinct movement pattern. It's like a fingerprint. And she's seen it in other games that she absolutely did not work on.
Yeah.
And so the data is just getting shared around, and we just need to be able to know where it's going.
Yeah.
So and a lot of people don't even know we're on strike, which is hard. So just getting the word out.
Yeah.
I honestly, I have a very, in some ways, optimistic view of all this, and I think that AI is way oversold. They're doing some amazing things. Look, trust me. Like I've heard my voice come out of a computer saying shit that I did not say, and I'm like, wow. If I wasn't really paying attention, I'd be like, yeah, I think I did that. I think I probably
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Like it's good, but there's a human thing that I think we register subconsciously that we can tell the difference, and we connect more when it's a human performance. And I would like to optimistically believe that this will not replace us.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, even if it takes out, 50% of 30% of the jobs, 20% of the jobs, it'll still be devastating to actors going forward. And I think that's one of the reasons we're fighting so hard, is because we see the future of that, and we see the future of that happening to so many people in other industries. And I mean, you talked about animation. I see it happening there, but in even non-arts related industries. And I think it's not about stopping the technology. It's what you can't do. It's about finding a way to all work together to sustain this ecosphere of people creating things, and without having to exploit everyone until within an inch of their lane into poverty, which I think is just something we should be concerned with at all.
Well, perfect segue to the final thing before we end here. Is often I asked folks, because I tend to make these for like a little bit more of an educated audience and not the general, like, how do you get into voice acting? But like, there's, as you know, and as you've seen, because I'm one of the million, there's a million people that do this. There's a million people that have gotten into this and that want to get into this, and etc. But going off of what you've talked about, I mean, like, even the AI stuff aside, it's harder than ever to make a living just being an actor, let alone being just a voice actor, like just an actor in general, or any kind of artist to a certain extent. So like, what I always try to ask in terms of like, what is your advice to people, is not like, the general like, oh, how do you just improve as an actor? It's like people that want to ascend to the next level. Like maybe they're already doing stuff, but they want to aspire to be at the level that you and a lot of your colleagues are at. For someone that is at a more advanced level, what is a piece of advice or any number of things that you would give?
I mean, I would say make your own stuff, and it may not pan out financially for you. Like your web series might not get discovered and like blow up like like Hell of a Boss or Has Been Hotel. I mean, but that's the dream, right? I mean, that wouldn't have happened if somebody didn't say, oh well, shit, nobody's making the stuff that I want to watch, or as an actor, the things that I want to be in, I need for my heart to create that for myself. And even if it doesn't blow up, it'll keep your heart alive through all this, which is so important, because it's just body blow after body blow in this business, and that's just part of the it was always that way, and it's still that way, and it's you're right, it's gotten harder to make a living in the same way that we used to in this business. You have to work harder, but I think that Tara and I still are trying to put projects together to the types of things we want to do, and I think that's really important. And with today's technology, you can do it, and it also encourages you to put together a team of people. Like, again, going back to the solitariness of this, it is this business is so much better and so much more pleasant, and I believe people succeed. You have a higher chance of succeeding if you try to put together a team of people who love doing this stuff, who you love working with. They can all have different specialties. It doesn't all have to be actors. You can writers and people who like to animate, and game devs, and getting all those people together are people that you can all come up together. You can support each other, and now more than ever, we need to support each other, and really help. Back to SpiderMan, because it's always a good place to go. My favorite line from the franchise is actually one of May's lines, which is, "When you help someone, you help everyone." And I believe that. I have to believe that. So I think don't always just wait. Really go out there and be relentless about what it is that you love, whether that's making stuff or reaching out directly to creators or studios and saying, "Hey, I want to do this. If you don't have an answer for me, can you pass me to somebody who does?" About like casting, like reach out directly to a studio that records the kind of things that you like, and shows that you watch or games that you play, and say, "Hey, I'm an actor. I'm trying to find out more about," because a lot of us we're like, "Oh, I don't have an agent. I don't know how I'm going to get those auditions." Reach out directly to those companies. Hey, I want to know about casting. Can you, if you don't have an answer, could you put me in touch with somebody who does? And I may put you in touch with somebody else. And you just try as many things, like direct things like that as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I firmly believe and agree with all of that. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Although
you have a background in that. Yeah,
well,
right.
I mean,
you probably have over and over said that because you're like, I started as an animator, and this. I mean, yeah.
That's our time, dude. Thank you so much. What's the best place for people to follow you? The healthiest social media platform you have, if any?
I mean, the healthiest social media platform is probably Blue Sky right now.
Sure.
And Instagram is where I promote a lot of stuff. Tara and I are finally, after all these years of people saying, "Well, do you teach classes?" We wrote a book, but we don't teach. And we're finally putting the finishing touches on an online course that people could take that's based on the book. So keep an eye out for that. I'm thinking, I love the community that I've curated over at Twitter, but I've been spending less time there, and that account will probably go away because I just can't abide it anymore.
Yeah.
I've been trying to spend less time on social media. It's just not healthy.
What a fantastic, another great piece of advice.
Don't do social media, kids.
No, just don't do it. Go touch grass. Anyway, thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Hopefully, we'll be out of the woods soon. Catch you later.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.